Hey guys, tonight we're going on a walk. Not just any walk, but one through a Stone Age winter evening. The kind where the air smells like wood smoke, coal pine, and something warm drifting from a distant fire. You won't believe this, but as the sun slips down behind the snow-covered ridge, there's a whole little camp tucked into the hollow ahead, quiet, glowing, and getting ready for the coldest hours of the night. We're going to step right into it. Just you, a snowy trail, and a small community settling in after a long winter day. The first hints of evening settle over the far edge of the winter forest as you approach, moving at an unhurried, steady pace across the snow. The light is already softening, drifting toward that muted blue that comes just before true twilight. All around, the snow lies in gentle slopes and shallow folds, like a vast sleeping animal breathing beneath the smooth white pelt. You feel the cool air touch your cheeks, but it is a careful, measured cold, not sharp, not biting, simply a reminder of the season, of the world settling into night. And ahead of you, far in the hush of the distance, a warm glow flickers low to the ground, just where the land dips into a shallow hollow. As you walk, the snow beneath your feet gives a soft, muffled sound, a sound that blends easily into the stillness. Each step presses down on fine, powdery crystals, and the air holds a faint dryness, the kind that comes when snow has settled for days without wind or thaw. The ancient pines nearby stand motionless, their branches heavy but relaxed beneath soft layers of snow. Every now and then, a tiny shift of snow slips off a branch in a gentle hush, falling like a sigh onto the ground below. Your breath leaves your body as small clouds of warmth, drifting slowly before fading into the cool evening. The forest holds this warmth in a quiet, companionable way, as though it has seen countless travellers passing through in just this same fading light, all moving towards safe places, where fires are tended and voices murmur softly together. The glow ahead grows a little brighter, or perhaps your eyes adjust as twilight deepens. You can begin to make out shapes around it now. Not sharp shapes, but the soft silhouettes of shelters nestled into the snow-covered earth. They rise like gentle humps, rounded and natural, built partly into the ground to hold warmth, their outer covering smoothed with snow and hides and carefully placed earth. A thin thread of smoke curls upward from one of them, drifting lazily into the dimming sky. You're close enough now that the faint scent of wood smoke reaches you, weaving between the cold pine-scented air. It is a welcoming scent, warm, familiar, steady. As the sky slowly shifts from pale gold to deeper blue, you feel the air settle more fully around you, and with every step, the glow of the campfire becomes more inviting. It flickers with a calm, rhythmic pulse, as though breathing in time with the settling night. You move closer, and the shallow hollow of the settlement becomes more apparent. The land dips gently, creating a natural shelter from the wind, though tonight the air is still and peaceful. The fire sits in the centre of this hollow, banked safely with stones, its flame steady and low, more ember than blaze. People move around it with slow, practiced motions, tending small tasks that help guide the camp from daylight into evening. A figure notices your approach and lifts a hand in a slow, easy gesture of greeting. Not urgent, not loud, simply acknowledging your presence in a way that makes the space feel even more welcoming. There is no rush here, only the gradual shift of the day giving way to night. As you step into the hollow, the warmth from the fire reaches you in a gentle wave. It wraps around your legs first, then your hands, then your face. The people near the fire continue their calm tasks, adjusting logs, arranging hides, stirring a muted glow of stones that have been heating at the edge of the embers. Everything is done with unhurried intention, each motion flowing into the next, like part of a long, familiar ritual. The sky above darkens a little more, and the first stars begin to pierce through the deepening blue. They appear faintly at first, like tiny pinpricks of silver, before slowly growing clearer, steadier, as though the world is gently preparing for the full embrace of night. You take in the shelters now that you are closer. Rounded shapes, their entrances partly covered with layered hides to keep out the cold. From within, soft golden light spills around the edges, and you catch glimpses of figures moving inside, adjusting bedding, placing warmed stones into shallow pits lined with woven mats and thick furs. Their movements are slow and contented, like people preparing a space they know will hold comfort through the long hours of the night. A quiet murmur drifts through the camp, not loud conversation, but the gentle exchanges of people working together at the close of day. Some sit near the fire, their hands busy with tasks that suit the fading light, smoothing cords of sinew, shaping small sections of wood, adjusting bindings on tools that will rest until morning. Others move between the shelters and the fire, bringing armfuls of neatly split wood or handfuls of dried herbs that will be placed near the interior hearths. The air around the camp feels warmer now, not because the temperature outside has changed, but because you're close enough to sense the shared warmth of people preparing for night. There is a comforting rhythm to everything. The slow crackle of the fire, the muted crunch of snow under careful footsteps, the soft thud of wood being set down, the faint rustle of hides as someone adjusts an entry flap. A few children sit near one of the shelter entrances, their small hands wrapped around smooth pieces of bone they are learning to shape. An elder watches them with a comfy, relaxed, patient expression. When one of the children holds up their work, the elder leans forward, offering a quiet comment that makes the child smile, before returning to their gentle task. As twilight deepens further, the landscape around the camp grows softer, the lines of the trees blending into the dimness. The snow reflects the firelight in a delicate golden shimmer, creating small circles of brightness that pulse as the flames move. Beyond these circles, the world is quiet and restful, as though the forest itself is bedding down for the long winter night. A small group of adults finishes placing logs in a drying rack near the fire. Long pieces split earlier in the day that will be used tomorrow or the day after. They arrange them in even, stable layers, ensuring they will stay dry and ready. The firelight touches their clothing. Layered hides carefully stitched, softened with use. Each layer has been prepared with patient care, scraped and stretched and smoked until it holds warmth effectively, even on the coldest nights. You step a little closer to the fire and feel the warmth gather more fully around your middle, your hands, your chest. Someone offers you a seat on a low, fur-covered log, and you settle into it easily, feeling the softness beneath you. The fire crackles in a slow, steady rhythm, the kind of sound that naturally calms the breath and eases the mind. The evening is now fully settled, and yet everything still glides gently forward, as though the camp exists in a place where time moves like drifting snow, quiet, unhurried and soft. The people around you continue their tasks, their movements slow, harmonious, woven into the dying light. This is how Stone Age winter evenings often unfolded. A gradual gathering of warmth, a steady preparation for night, a rhythm shaped by the season and shared by everyone. And as you sit there, feeling the warmth, hearing the soft sounds of activity, watching the sky deepen into night, you sense that this camp, this moment, this gentle transition from day to twilight, holds everything you need to feel fully at ease. The fire glows a little brighter as someone leans forward to adjust a log. Sparks drift upward, tiny orange lights that flicker for a second before disappearing into the darkening sky. The stars overhead grow sharper, more numerous, as though watching over the camp with quiet attention. And slowly, peacefully, the first act of night settles around you, and the warmth that gathers around you feels not only like the heat of the fire, but also like the calm presence of the people who move gently through the space, each of them contributing to the quiet rhythm of the evening. A woman sitting across the fire begins to polish a long, curved piece of antler, her hands moving in soft, practiced arcs. The light from the flames glints along its surface, catching the faint ridges that show where it once grew, carrying with it the memory of summers long past. She rubs it with a smooth stone, turning it slowly, letting every part of its surface meet the even pressure of her hands. The antler's pale hue deepens to a warm cream in the firelight, and she exhales softly, her breath carrying a small plume of warmth into the gathering night air. Nearby, a young man works at untying a bundle of dried grasses that have been cut and stored in the last warm weeks of autumn. He loosens the bindings carefully, spreading the grasses into a neat fan. Their dry smell rises gently, blending with the scents of wood smoke and snow. He sorts them by thickness, his fingers slipping gently along their fibres, searching for the ones most suitable for weaving cordage. Each bundle produces a slightly different texture. Some grasses are tougher, some more flexible, and he sets aside the strands that respond well to twisting, the ones that will form strong bindings for tools and small baskets. The camp around you is alive in this calm, almost hypnotic way, with every person absorbed in a task that contributes to the quiet hum of community. Across from the fire, an older man adjusts one of the drying racks. He lifts a long strip of hide, still damp from its final smoking earlier in the day, and shifts its position so that it will dry evenly under the low warmth of the fire. The hide's edges are darkened slightly from the smoke, and you can smell the faint scent of tannin and wood ash rising from its surface. He nods to himself, satisfied, and steps aside so another person can set a new piece of hide alongside it. The camp feels expansive, not because it is large, but because nothing within it is rushed or forced. Each motion leads naturally into the next, like a long-held melody everyone knows by heart. A woman with a strand of hair loosely tied back kneels beside a pile of small stones she has gathered earlier, stones chosen specifically for their ability to hold heat. She sorts them with gentle taps, listening for the clear, solid sound that indicates a stone will warm evenly and release its heat slowly over many hours. Those that ring true are placed into a small, shallow pit near the fire, where their edges collect the glow of embers. Those that are too soft or brittle are set aside for other uses, crushing pigments, weighing down tent edges, or marking storage spots beneath the snow. A pair of children move slowly around the fire, occasionally exchanging quiet giggles, but never disturbing the steady rhythm of the adults. They are gathering small pieces of bark and dry twigs, holding them in armfuls that spill slightly over the edges. One child pauses beside you, looking at the fire with solemn concentration before carefully placing a single twig on the edge of the embers. The small flame that curls up in response makes the child smile, and they move away again, continuing their gentle circuit around the camp. The fire crackles low, steady, and the colour of the flames deepens as the air grows darker. The golden hues shift into richer ambers, and the shadows that the fire casts stretch longer, softer, blending together until the entire camp seems wrapped in one continuous wave of warmth and flickering light. Even the snow around the fire takes on a warm tint, glowing faintly as though lit from within. A woman sits on a low, hide-covered platform, smoothing a piece of leather that will later be shaped into a new pair of winter foot coverings. She works the leather slowly, pressing its surface with a polished bone scraper, softening it with long, rhythmic strokes. The leather responds to her touch, warming slightly beneath her hand. Its scent rises, rich, earthy, slightly smoky, and it blends seamlessly with the other smells that weave through the air. She pauses occasionally to stretch her wrist or examine the thickness of the hide, her fingers tracing its edges where it will be sewn into place. Beside her lies a bundle of sinew strands, each one carefully split and twisted earlier in the day. They wait patiently, ready to become seams that hold warmth close to the skin. The sky above grows darker still, and more stars emerge, slowly, carefully, as though waking from their own long rest. They glimmer faintly at first, then with increasing clarity. Their light reflects in the snow, creating a faint shimmer that seems almost like frost forming in the air. A crescent moon rises low on the horizon, casting a pale glow over the quiet forest beyond the hollow. Its light mixes with the warm fire glow, forming a soft gradient across the snow-covered ground. A group of people near one of the shelters begin preparing a small collection of dried roots. They scrape the outer layers with simple, efficient motions, revealing the pale, fibrous insides that will be softened later with warm water. Their voices murmur, low, even-toned as they work. The roots have been stored carefully since the late summer, hung high inside the shelter where they remained, dry and safe. Tonight, the group inspects each one, assessing its firmness, removing any parts that have grown too brittle. Tiny flakes fall to the snow as they work, landing silently before disappearing into the dim light. Closer to the entrance of one shelter, a young woman places a bowl carved from wood onto a small wooden platform. Inside the bowl is a mixture of fat and pulverized dried berries, combined long ago and preserved through the cold months. She uses a slender bone tool to gently stir the mixture, checking its consistency. The scent is faint but pleasant, carrying the memory of warmer days. She adds just a touch of melted fat from a small container warmed by the fire, then stirs again until the mixture becomes smooth and even. Once satisfied, she lifts the bowl and carries it into the shelter with practiced ease. The opening of the shelter reveals a gentle golden glow, and the soft movement of figures inside. Within, hides cover the ground in multiple layers, forming a thick, insulating bed. The women and men working there adjust the hides to make space for the bowl. Their shadows ripple along the interior walls, blending into the soft, rounded shapes created by the structure. The air inside smells faintly of smoke, warmed earth, and the subtle fragrance of dried grasses woven into the bedding. And all around the camp, the movements continue, the quiet steps, the rustle of hides, the soft brushing of leather against snow, the faint scraping of stone tools against bone or wood. It all gathers into one sound, a soft undercurrent that flows beneath the night, steady and calming. A man approaches the fire, carrying a small bundle wrapped in hide. He kneels carefully and unwraps it to reveal a collection of stone flakes, sharp and clean from earlier shaping. He lifts one between his fingers, examining the edge in the firelight. The tiny shadows along its surface reveal the delicate work of flint knapping, the careful tapping, the steady pressure that shaped it into something useful. He turns it slowly, tapping its edge lightly to test its strength. Then he selects a slender piece of antler, already smoothed and shaped, and begins fitting the stone flake into a prepared notch. He presses it gently, adjusting its angle until it rests perfectly. Then he binds it with a strip of sinew, pulling it tight so that the stone becomes a natural extension of the antler. His breaths are steady, and each motion is gentle, deliberate. The binding glistens slightly with melted fat, which will help it harden and hold firm as it dries. He continues turning the tool in his hands, watching how the firelight reflects along its edge. This tool will be used for scraping hides, shaping wood, or preparing food. Simple tasks, but each one essential. The camp is a web of such quiet, purposeful actions, each one contributing to the sense that everything is in balance, that every task is carried out with care and understanding. As you watch, you notice how these tasks shift seamlessly from one person to another. Someone finishes scraping a hide and passes it to a younger person who begins to fold it neatly. Another completes a small wooden carving and hands it to an elder who inspects it, smiles, and places it among other tools ready for use. Near one of the shelters, a woman and an older youth are sorting a small pile of bones, long bones from large animals, carefully cleaned and prepared weeks ago. They inspect each one for cracks or imperfections. The smoother, straighter bones will later be shaped into needles or awls. The thicker ones will be fashioned into points, scrapers or handles. Some bones have already been split lengthwise, exposing the inner marrow cavity long since emptied and used. The exposed surfaces gleam faintly under the firelight, creamy and smooth. The woman uses a small flint scraper to shave down a ridge on one of the bones, producing a soft, whispering sound that echoes the rhythm of her breath. As the night anchors itself more fully around the camp, people begin moving slightly closer to the fire. Not because of cold. The air remains still and the embers radiate steady warmth, but because the tasks suited for deeper night require closer attention to the fire's light. A group gathers a short distance from where you sit and begins twisting fibres together to form strong thread. The fibres come from nettles harvested in late summer, dried carefully, then split and twisted. When moistened slightly, they become remarkably durable. The group works in pairs. One person pulls the fibres evenly, while the other twists them tightly, merging them together. Their hands move in mirrored motions, and the threads grow longer with each turn. A few people tend to the fire itself, shifting embers, adding small pieces of wood, creating pockets of warmth where stones can be placed to heat. They use long sticks to move the coals, stirring them gently until a steady glow spreads outward in a broad circle. Sparks rise occasionally, drifting upward like tiny orange insects taking flight for a moment before disappearing into the night. Someone near the drying rack lifts a piece of smoked fish from where it has hung all day. The surface has darkened slowly in the smoke, absorbing flavour and preserving its texture. She examines it carefully, pressing its surface lightly, then nods with satisfaction and places it into a tightly woven basket lined with soft grasses. The basket has been crafted so well that no air passes through its sides. It is meant for storing food through the long winter. She secures the lid with a simple twist of cordage and sets the basket beside several others. Across the camp, another person is tending a small pot carved from soapstone. The pot sits near the edge of the fire, warmed by the embers, but never placed directly in the flames. Inside is a mixture of melted fat and tiny shavings of dried herbs collected in late autumn. The mixture is stirred slowly, and the scent of warm earth, dried leaves, and rich fat drifts through the air. This blend will be used later to soften hands and feet or protect skin from the cold. You watch as the pot is lifted from the edge of the fire and carried toward one of the shelters with deliberate care. The person holds it with both hands, gripping it with a wrap of hide to protect their palms from the heat. Their steps are slow, steady, each foot pressing gently into the snow. They disappear through the shelter's hide-covered entrance, and for a moment the faint scent of the warm mixture lingers in the air behind them. Nearby, two older children sit side by side, working on a small project of their own. They are shaping a piece of wood, slowly shaving it down using small sharp flakes. The wood is from a tree that grows close to the stream, and its grain is firm but easy to carve in long, even strips. The children pass the piece back and forth, checking its shape against a shallow line drawn in the snow beside them. Their breaths puff out in soft clouds, and they speak in quiet tones, coordinating their efforts without breaking the calm atmosphere of the camp. A man sitting at the fire begins to retighten the bindings on a large wooden frame that will be used for drying meat or fish. The frame is made of smooth branches, carefully bent and tied together. He checks each connection, adjusting the tension and ensuring that the bindings remain strong. When he pulls on the cordage, it gives slightly, then holds firm. He nods, satisfied, and sets the frame aside to rest against a snowbank until it is needed again. The quiet murmur of voices continues, flowing like a gentle stream around you. You catch fragments of conversation, mentions of tasks completed earlier, plans for tomorrow, observations about the shape of the moon or the smell of the air. None of it is hurried, and none of it demands attention. It is simply part of the living breath of the camp, a soft weaving of sound that adds to the warmth and comfort of the space. From the edge of the clearing, a small group returns, carrying an armful of branches they have gathered from the nearby forest. These branches are deadfall, selected for their dryness and ideal size for night fires. They bring them to the side of the fire pit and begin gently breaking them into smaller pieces. The sound of snapping wood is muted by the thick winter air, each break muffled, blending naturally into the steady rhythm of the camp. The pieces are stacked neatly beside the fire, ready to be used as needed. The newcomers shake a dusting of snow from their hair and shoulders. Their clothing is layered, hides stitched together and lined with fur for insulation. Their boots are thickly wrapped, and their hands emerge from sturdy mitts made of softened leather. They kneel near the fire, warming their hands and speaking quietly with those already gathered. The fire responds with a soft flicker, casting warm light across their faces. Another group finishes adjusting the hides over one of the shelter entrances. They pull them taut, securing the edges so that warm air remains inside while still allowing easy access. The hides overlap slightly, forming an opening that can be pushed through without effort. The group steps back, examining their work, and then one of them gently pats the edge of the shelter, as though acknowledging its solid presence. At the edge of the fire's glow, a young woman kneels beside a shallow depression in the snow. She uses a flat stone to grind dried berries, stored from late summer. The berries crumble into a fine, dark powder, their scent faint but sweet. She mixes them with a little warm water, forming a paste that will later be used to flavour food. As she works, the rhythmic motion of grinding matches the slow rise and fall of her breath. The forest surrounding the camp stands still and tall, dark silhouettes of trees against a sky that continues to deepen in colour. The stars have now fully emerged, scattered across the sky in patterns that the people of this camp know well. These stars guide them during longer journeys, allowing them to travel safely, even on nights much colder than this one. One man glances upward occasionally, as though checking the positions of certain stars out of long habit. But tonight, there is no journey to take, only the gentle tasks that come with evening. As you observe the camp, you feel the subtle shifts of temperature and sound, the interplay of warmth from the fire and coolness from the stars above. The snow reflects both, holding them together in a way that makes everything feel balanced, harmonious. A woman near the fire begins shaping a long strand of sinew, stretching it slowly, carefully, to ensure its fibres remain even. The sinew glistens slightly, the firelight catching its moist surface. She twists it gently, testing its strength. Once satisfied, she loops it and sets it aside on a flat stone to dry further. Someone stirs the embers, lifting a glowing coal and placing it carefully onto a small platform made of bark. This coal will be carried into one of the shelters to start a small controlled fire inside their central hearth. The person walks slowly, holding the platform steady, using a thick hide to protect their fingers. The glowing coal trails a faint line of warmth through the air as they move. Inside the shelter, soft voices greet them, and the glow of the coal illuminates the interior for a moment as they place it onto a bed of dried grasses and small twigs. A few gentle breaths coax the flame to life, and the fire catches slowly, filling the shelter with a warm, flickering glow that spills gently out through the entrance. For a moment, you simply observe the way the firelight interacts with the snow and the shadows, how the warm colours ebb and flow across the ground, across faces, across the hides and tools scattered around the camp. The night outside feels large, expansive, full of quiet potential, while the camp feels like a warm pocket of life held gently within it. The tasks continue, shaping, scraping, binding, sorting. The movements grow even smoother as everyone settles into the deeper part of the evening. You can sense the familiarity they all hold with these actions, the kind of practiced knowledge that comes from countless nights spent preparing for the coldest hours. Yet nothing is hurried. Each motion has its own calm pace, its own rhythm that contributes to the steady flow of the night. The fire shifts again, sending a shower of small sparks upward before settling into a deeper, steadier glow. Someone adds a single piece of wood to the edge of the flame, not enough to grow it, but just enough to maintain its warmth. The wood catches slowly, its surface darkening, then glowing as the embers crawl upward along its length. And still, the night deepens, and still, the camp remains wrapped in this quiet living warmth, every person moving with the soft assurance of those who know exactly how to tend the night, how to shape the hours into something safe, purposeful, and full of gentle meaning. And as the fire settles into this deeper glow, a soft chorus of small sounds rises around the camp, not loud, not sharp, but the mingled rustle of work, continuing into the darker hours. A woman seated close to the fire shifts slightly, adjusting a fur draped across her knees as she leans over the curved wooden bowl she's carving. The wood, taken from the inner trunk of a fallen birch, is pale and smooth, and her carving tool, a small flint blade anchored firmly in an antler handle, moves with gentle precision. Each slow scrape sends tiny curls of wood drifting onto the hide beneath her legs. She gathers them occasionally, brushing them into a neat pile with soft flicks of her fingers. The faint sweet scent of fresh birchwood mixes with the smell of the fire, adding new texture to the air. Beside her, a young man concentrates on reshaping a bone needle whose tip has worn slightly from use. He holds the needle carefully between his fingers, turning it to inspect the tiny point. A curved piece of stone rests in his palm. The stone has been polished smooth by years of use, its surface fitting his hand perfectly. With slow, deliberate motions, he sharpens the tip of the needle, then runs it carefully along the length of the bone to ensure it is free of nicks or rough edges. When he lifts it, the firelight catches the delicate point, illuminating it in a warm glow. He smiles faintly and threads it through a loop of sinew to ensure it passes smoothly. Satisfied, he tucks the needle into a small leather pouch beside him. Further from the central fire, a group is working on the wooden frame of a small sled. This sled will be used later in the season to transport bundles of wood, hides and food stores across the snow. The frame is made from long, slender branches that have been bent into shape while still green weeks ago. Tonight, the group is reinforcing the bindings, adding new layers of cordage and smoothing the runners. One man runs his palm along the underside of a runner, checking for rough spots. His hand glides over the wood, feeling every slight change in texture. He pauses at a small bump, examines it, and uses a scraper to shave away the irregularity with careful measured strokes. Another person applies a thin layer of fat to the runner, making it glossy and smooth, ready to glide silently over snow. Closer to the fire, a young boy is carefully arranging pieces of bark into a small pattern on the snow. He picks up each piece, Studying the shape, then places it with slow consideration. The pattern forms an open spiral that seems to mirror the whirls found in older wood or the movement of smoke rising from the fire. Nearby, a girl of similar age watches him with a thoughtful expression, occasionally pointing to a piece he might shift slightly. The boy nods, and together they adjust the pieces until the pattern feels balanced. Then, wordlessly, they both step back to look at their work, their breath rising in gentle clouds. The firelight casts the spiral into soft relief, the bark pieces creating a mosaic that seems to pulse with the warmth. A pair of older adults sits quietly a short distance away, working on repairing the bindings of a long winter garment. The garment lies across their laps, a cloak made of multiple layers of hide stitched together with sinew. The outermost hide is thick and sturdy, treated with smoke so that it resists moisture. Beneath it are softer layers, providing warmth and insulation. A tear near the edge has begun to widen, so they carefully realign the hide and stitch it back together with slow, even movements. One person holds the fabric taut, while the other pushes the needle through. Their hands move with the assurance of years of experience, each stitch forming a tiny loop that reinforces the one before it. As they work, they speak quietly to one another, their voices low and warm, blending with the fire's steady hum. Nearby, a small group is engaged in preparing a type of binding made from animal gut. They have cleaned and dried the material earlier, and now they stretch it gently between two carved wooden stakes. The gut glistens faintly, translucent in the firelight. They work carefully, rubbing it with warm water and a mixture of ash to soften the fibres. The scent is mild, earthy, not unpleasant, and it mingles with the other smells carried softly through the camp. Once the gut becomes pliable, they begin twisting it evenly, creating a cord that will be strong, durable, and resistant to moisture. This cord will be used to secure tools, to form bindings on spear shafts, or to strengthen the frames of shelters. As they twist, the cord lengthens and tightens, forming a neat coil between their hands. One of the eldest members of the group sits near the fire, slowly kneading a ball of warm earth mixed with crushed charcoal and fat. This mixture, when dried, becomes a marking pigment used for decorating tools or adding simple markings to hides and shelters. The elder's hands move with careful firmness, folding the mixture again and again. The earthy scent rises each time they press their palms into the warm mass, and the firelight makes the mixture look almost like dark clay. They occasionally glance around the camp, their eyes warm and observant, taking in the quiet motion of everyone at work. A small smile forms at the corner of their mouth, a smile that speaks of familiarity with these rhythms, of countless nights that have unfolded in this same calm, steady way. A woman near the shelter entrance is weaving a basket from pliable twigs, soaked earlier in warm water. The twigs bend easily between her fingers, forming tight curves that spiral outward from the base. She works with two hands, crossing and twisting the strands with precise, gentle motions. The basket grows slowly, expanding in a circular pattern. When she pauses, she dips her fingers into a small bowl of melted fat and lightly coats the outer surface of the basket, strengthening the fibres. The scent of the fat is faint and soothing. She examines the shape, gently pressing its sides to ensure they hold firm, then resumes weaving. Not far from her, a group of youths is practicing the art of sounding a hollow bone whistle. These whistles are used during travel to signal one another in low visibility conditions. The youth place their lips against the bone, blow softly, and listen as the sound carries in short, gentle tones that drift just far enough to be heard within the camp, but not beyond. They vary the sounds, longer, shorter, higher, lower, experimenting with tones until their breath grows steady and controlled. Their instructor, a person with calm eyes and soft-spoken guidance, stands beside them, offering small adjustments to their hand positions and the angle of their breath. A few steps beyond the firelight's reach, two people are working together to check the bindings of a large storage bundle buried partially in the snow. The snow acts as a natural cooling chamber, preserving food for long periods. They brush away the fine top layer of snow, revealing the bundle, a tightly secured hide-wrapped mass containing roots, dried vegetables, and possibly smoked meat. They inspect the hide for signs of moisture or loosened knots. The hide remains firm, and the cordage binding it together is taut. They gently recover the bundle with fresh snow, smoothing it into place with their hands. The snow compresses under their palms, producing a soft, muffled sound. A cluster of lantern-like vessels carved from hollowed-out bone sits near the fire, their surfaces polished smooth. Inside them, small embers glow, protected from the wind, yet providing enough heat to warm hands or dry small tools. A man picks one up, holding it between his palms. He feels the heat radiating through the bone and examines the small holes carved into the side that allow just enough air to keep the ember burning. He nods, satisfied with its warmth, and sets it down again in its place, where it casts a soft glow across the snow. Farther out, beyond the immediate warmth of the fire, several people begin walking toward the gentle slope that leads to the storage caves nearby. They carry hide-wrapped bundles and wooden containers. The group moves in a slow, steady line, their footsteps muffled by the thick snow. Their breath rises in soft plumes, and the faint creak of the snow beneath their feet blends with the quiet sounds of the camp behind them. Their silhouettes are dark against the starlit sky, their forms blending with the shadows of the trees as they reach the slope and begin to descend carefully along a well-worn path. The storage caves are shallow hollows along a rocky outcrop, chosen for their natural insulation and protection from the elements. Inside, the air stays cold and dry, a perfect place for preserving food throughout the winter. The group enters the caves one by one, the faint light from small torches illuminating the smooth icy floor. They place the bundles along a raised stone ledge, arranging them neatly, ensuring that air can circulate around them. One person taps lightly on a wooden container to check the contents inside. The hollow sound indicates the food is still dry and well preserved. They nod to one another with quiet satisfaction, then carefully exit the cave, their footsteps slow and sure. Back in the camp, another small group is arranging stones around the fire pit. These stones have been gathered from a nearby riverbank, selected for their density and heat retention. The group places them in a pattern to ensure that the fire's warmth spreads evenly. Their hands move deliberately, feeling the weight and texture of each stone. When they finish arranging them, they lean back to observe the new alignment, watching as the firelight flickers across the stone's rough surfaces. A woman seated a few paces away is braiding a cord from strips of softened hide. She twists the strips together with slow, careful motions, creating a smooth, even braid. The cord grows longer in her hands, and she occasionally stretches it to test its elasticity. Once finished, she coils the cord neatly and places it into a small woven bag beside her. Beside one of the shelters, a man is repairing a small tear in a fur-lined hood. He holds the hood up to the firelight, examining the tear. Then he takes a fine bone needle and threads it with a strand of sinew. His stitches are small and precise, each one blending seamlessly into the fur. When he finishes, he runs his fingers along the seam to check for gaps. Finding none, he smiles softly to himself and places the hood beside the shelter entrance. A group of children has gathered near the fire, engaging in a simple game involving small stones and carved pieces of bone. They roll the pieces across the snow, watching how they come to rest. The pieces are carved with tiny shallow grooves that create distinct sound patterns as they move. The children take turns rolling them, listening closely to the soft tapping sounds. Their laughter is gentle, never breaking the calm atmosphere of the camp. Nearby, a woman tends to a small clay pot that contains warm pine resin. She stirs it with a slender stick, watching as the resin melts slowly into a thick golden liquid. This resin will be used later as an adhesive for repairing tools or sealing small cracks in wooden containers. The scent of pine rises into the air, fresh and sharp enough to add a crisp counterpoint to the warmth of the fire. Further from the fire, at the base of a tall tree, a man sets up a simple trap made of bent branches and cordage. This trap is not meant for killing. Rather, it is for marking the presence of small forest animals. When the animal passes, the trap will lightly touch its fur, leaving a trace of resin on its side. Later, the hunters will check the paths and examine tracks in the snow for signs of this resin, which tells them where animals have passed safely. He sets the trap gently, ensuring that it will not frighten any creature. His movements are slow, considerate, each gesture made with respect for the forest around him. Another figure stands beside him, pointing out faint tracks in the snow. These tracks belong to a fox that passed earlier in the day. The man kneels to study them closely. The tracks are sharp-edged, newly made, and the snow around them remains crisp, showing no signs of disturbance. He follows the direction of the tracks with his eyes, then nods. The two exchange a quiet word before returning to the warmth of the camp. Back near the fire, someone begins adding small pieces of dried bark to the flames. The bark crackles softly, adding a gentle fragrance to the air. The fire's glow deepens, casting a warm hue across the surrounding snow. Shadows stretch farther as the logs shift, producing new patterns in the flickering light. At the far edge of the clearing, a tall figure stands looking out into the forest. Not in worry, simply observing. Their silhouette is calm and unmoving, their breath rising in slow, even clouds. The forest stands quiet before them, the trees dark and tall against the sky. After a moment, they turn and walk back toward the fire, their steps steady and familiar. Near the shelters, a group of women works together to separate strands of dried willow bark. The strands will later be twisted into cordage. They soak the bark in warm water, then split it carefully, pulling apart the fibres with gentle hands. The strands glisten slightly as they separate, and the women place them in neat bundles on a flat hide beside them. Their voices murmur softly, the cadence of their speech matching the rhythm of their work. On the other side of the fire, a man sharpens a wooden digging stick. he uses a piece of flint to shape the tip, shaving it into a smooth point. The stick will be used to break frozen ground, to dig for roots, or to loosen snow-packed paths. The sound of flint scraping wood is soft and rhythmic, blending into the quiet tapestry of sounds that fill the camp. Two older children carry a wooden board between them, its surface covered in small carved notches. These notches represent the phases of the moon. The children bring the board to an elder, who inspects it with careful eyes. They point out a few notches that seem slightly uneven. The elder shows them how to smooth the edges with a stone tool, and the children begin working diligently, their fingers steady as they adjust the carvings. Closer to the fire, a man tends a small pot of snow, melting it into water. The water will be used to soften sinew, dampen hides, and prepare various materials for later tasks. He stirs the melting snow with a wooden stick, watching as the crystalline forms dissolve into clear liquid. When the water becomes warm enough, he pours it into a larger container, then places more snow into the pot to melt. A group of adults moves toward the centre of the camp, carrying a heavy bundle. They unwrap it carefully to reveal a large hide that has been tanned and softened over many days. Tonight, they plan to stretch it onto a wooden frame to finish its preparation. They spread the hide onto the snow and gently pull at its edges. The hide stretches evenly, its surface smooth and supple. They lift it onto the frame, securing it with cordage, ensuring it stays taut. The hide catches the firelight, glowing softly in shades of earth and gold. And still, the camp continues its steady rhythm, everyone moving with purpose, with calm, with quiet familiarity. And the stretched hide, suspended neatly within the wooden frame, shifts gently as those gathered around it adjust its tension, pulling at its corners with practiced care. Each tug produces a faint creak of cordage, settling into place, the sound blending into the deeper hum of the night. The surface of the hide glows softly beneath the firelight, expanding and contracting almost imperceptibly as the heat of the camp radiates across it. Small beads of moisture rise along one edge, catching the light like tiny pearls before evaporating into the cold air. Beside the frame, a young woman kneels on a thick fur laid over the snow. She holds a thin bone scraper in one hand and begins smoothing the hide's surface. Her movements slow and even. The sound of scraping, soft, rhythmic, adds to the atmosphere. Like the quiet breaths of the people gathered nearby, each pass of the scraper leaves a faint trail behind, a subtle shift in texture that only experienced hands would notice. She tilts her head slightly, examining her work. The hide's inner surface becomes increasingly supple, its fibres aligning under her careful touch. A short distance from her, a man begins warming a small pot of rendered fat. The pot sits on a flat stone beside the fire, the stone absorbing heat from the embers. As the fat liquefies, he dips a carved wooden paddle into it, stirring slowly. The scent rises, rich, warm, carrying hints of past seasons and meals shared. When the fat reaches the right warmth, he pours a small amount onto a shallow dish and brings it to the woman working the hide. She nods appreciatively and dips her fingers into the warmed fat, pressing it gently along the hide's edges. The hide absorbs the warmth and moisture, becoming even more pliant beneath her hands. Not far from them, a man and woman work together on the unfinished sled runners. They test the curvature of each runner, pressing gently near the ends, watching how the wood responds. The man runs his palm along the length of one runner, feeling its smoothness. He lifts it, turning it toward the firelight to better see the grain. The woman beside him holds a piece of leather soaked in warm water. She wraps it around one section of the runner and pulls it taut, securing it with sinew. The binding will dry overnight and reinforce the wood's natural curve. At the edge of the camp, a cluster of small wooden pegs stands upright in the snow. A young boy crouches beside them, arranging them into a specific pattern. The pegs are carved with simple markings, lines, dots, shallow grooves that represent different tasks or observations. These pegs serve as reminders for the group, marking what needs tending tomorrow, checking the fish traps near the stream, gathering fallen branches from a grove of birches, inspecting a storage pit for signs of moisture. The boy moves them with slow, deliberate motions, placing each one in its proper place. When he finishes, he stands and brushes the snow from his hands, pausing a moment to admire the pattern he's created. Near him, a woman sits cross-legged on a thick hide, weaving a new carrying sling from woven grasses and thin strips of leather. Her hands move with fluid precision. She threads the grasses through the leather with careful tension, making sure the weave holds firm. The sling will be used for carrying small tools or bundles of food. As she works, she occasionally lifts the sling to examine it, tugging gently on the edges to test their strength. Satisfied, she continues weaving, the motion of her hands steady and sure. Along the perimeter of the camp, several people are tending a pile of snow that has been gathered earlier in the evening. The snow, packed tightly into large wooden troughs, will melt overnight in the warmth of the shelters, providing fresh water for the next day. They examine the troughs for cracks or weak spots, reinforcing them with lashings of hide where needed. The snow inside glistens under the firelight, its surface reflecting faint hues of orange and gold. They brush away loose snow, smoothing the top layers to ensure even melting. At the far side of the camp, two elders are selecting pieces of wood from a pile stored under a lean-to structure. These pieces are long, narrow, and slightly curved, ideal for shaping into tools or support beams for shelters. The elders examine each piece, tapping lightly on the wood to test its sound. A clear ring indicates dryness and strength. A dull thud suggests moisture or weakness. They set aside the best pieces for upcoming tasks. One elder picks up a particularly well-shaped branch and smiles softly, running their thumb along its surface. They hand it to the younger person beside them, who nods with quiet understanding. A small fire crackles at the edge of the clearing, separate from the main hearth. Around it sits a group of children and youths, learning the basics of flint shaping. They each hold a small piece of flint and a rounded stone. An instructor demonstrates how to strike at the flint's edge with gentle, controlled pressure, causing thin flakes to chip away. The children watch closely, their eyes reflecting the small flames. When they attempt it themselves, the instructor offers quiet corrections. Adjust your grip, angle the stone slightly, tap just here. The soft ring of flint meeting stone rises intermittently, filling the air with a quiet rhythm. Near the main fire, a basket filled with dried herbs sits beside a stack of wooden bowls. A woman and an older adolescent sort through the herbs, separating them into small piles. Each herb carries a different scent: earthy, sweet, slightly bitter. These herbs will be used for flavouring foods, calming stomachs, and soothing minor aches. The two examine each sprig carefully, discarding those that have become too brittle or lost their scent over time. They place the best herbs into small containers made from hollowed out gourds. The smell of dried sage and sweetgrass drifts into the air, mingling with the more pervasive scent of smoke. Beside one shelter entrance, a father is showing his young daughter how to create a simple knot from sinew. His hands move slowly, guiding hers through the motions. She watches with deep concentration, her tongue poking slightly from the corner of her mouth. When she completes the knot, she beams with pride. The father gently tests it, tugging on both ends. It holds firm. He ruffles her hair with affection, and she giggles softly before beginning another knot. A man and a woman are examining a set of bone tools laid out on a hide. These tools include scrapers, awls, and needles of various sizes. The woman picks up a scraper and runs her finger along its edge. It feels slightly dull, so she sharpens it using a small piece of coarse stone. The sound is faint but steady. The man checks an awl, examining its point under the firelight. He presses it lightly against a strip of leather to test its sharpness. When satisfied, he places it back among the other tools. A short walk from the fire, another group is working on creating a set of woven mats that will be placed beneath sleeping hides. These mats are woven from dried reeds collected near the water's edge during warmer months. The group arranges the reeds in straight lines, then weaves them together with thin strands of bark. The mats grow larger with each pass, their surfaces even and supportive. These mats insulate sleeping areas from the cold ground, adding comfort and warmth during long winter nights. Near them, a tall man is crafting a wooden frame that will be used to carry goods across the snow. The frame consists of long, straight branches lashed together at precise angles. He secures each joint with careful attention, pulling the bindings tight, twisting them so that they lie flat. His breath forms soft clouds in the cool night air. When he finishes securing one joint, he presses his weight gently against the frame to test its strength. The frame holds firm. He nods with quiet satisfaction and moves to the next binding. Close to the main fire, a woman sits shaping a small figurine carved from antler. The figurine is smooth and rounded, depicting a simple, stylized form. She uses a flint blade to refine its edges, then polishes it with a handful of soft grasses. The surface gleams softly in the firelight. She holds it up to examine it, turning it slowly. It fits comfortably in her palm, its contours pleasing to the touch. She places it beside a small bundle of other carved items. At the far end of the camp, several individuals are arranging a line of stones that mark a path leading into the forest. These stones help guide travellers during dim light or heavy snowfall. They place each stone carefully, pressing it slightly into the snow to ensure it will remain visible even after fresh snowfall. The stones vary in size, but each has been selected for its distinct shape or colour. They create a path that curves gently, following the natural contours of the land. A group near the fire is boiling snow in a large clay vessel. The vessel rests on a sturdy tripod made of lashed branches. The boiling water emits a soft hiss, steam rising in gentle curls. Once melted, the water will be used to soften hides, prepare food, and clean tools. The group stirs the water occasionally, ensuring it melts evenly. A woman tests the temperature with the back of her hand, then nods and adds more snow to the pot. In the deeper part of the camp, 2 youths are tending to a set of wooden snares. These snares are simple, made to gently gather information about animal pathways rather than catch or trap. They test the tension of each one, adjusting the height and angle. The snares are placed along known animal trails, and when an animal brushes against them, they leave behind a small marker of charcoal dust. This allows the hunters to know exactly where the animals have passed. The youths inspect each snare with focused attention, ensuring the mechanisms are lightly set and will not disturb the animals. Nearby, a woman is repairing a set of mitts made from fur-lined hide. She examines the edges carefully, checking for fraying. With small precise stitches, she reinforces the seams. The mitts are thick and warm, necessary for extended journeys out of camp. Once repaired, she tests them by slipping her hands inside, flexing her fingers, feeling the way the hide conforms to her hands. She smiles softly, satisfied with her work. A group of men and women gather near the edge of the fire to examine a bundle of reed arrows, stored for use in warmer months. They test their straightness, running their fingers along the shafts. The arrows are lightweight, their tips made from small, carefully shaped stones. Though they will not be used for many weeks, checking them regularly ensures they remain ready. The group takes turns testing the flex of each arrow, making small adjustments to bindings where necessary. Another small group tends to the fire itself, adjusting the logs to maintain an even burn. They use long sticks to shift the embers, watching as the fire settles into a low, steady flame. Sparks rise occasionally, drifting upward like fireflies before disappearing into the night sky. They place several stones along the fire's edge to heat. These stones will later be brought into the shelters to keep the sleeping areas warm. Away from the fire, a group is arranging a set of bone beads on a hide. These beads are small, polished, and carved with intricate markings. The group moves them into different patterns, deciding how they will be strung together. The beads will be used to decorate clothing, serving both practical and symbolic purposes. The group discusses softly which patterns hold meaning, pointing to specific beads and rearranging them with gentle touches. Near the shelters, someone is adjusting the lashings that hold the outer layers of snow-packed walls together. They ensure the snow is compressed firmly, reinforcing the thermal insulation. They examine the seams where the hides meet, ensuring no draft can enter. Their hands move with calm confidence, familiar with the structure's needs. A child sits beside one of the shelters, carving a small wooden disc. The disc will be used as a game piece. She uses a stone tool to smooth its edges, turning it slowly in her hands. Once the edges are smooth, she carves a simple spiral pattern into the centre. She lifts it to the firelight, admiring her work before setting it beside her other pieces. Beside her, an older woman sorts through a basket of dried mushrooms. These mushrooms were collected during early autumn and dried in the sun. She examines each one, checking for signs of spoilage. The mushrooms that pass inspection are placed into a clay pot lined with dried leaves. Their earthy scent drifts into the air, mingling with the scent of the fire. And still the night deepens, the stars growing brighter overhead as the camp continues in its steady rhythm. Task after task, unfolding in quiet harmony, each motion part of a larger pattern that stretches back through countless winters. And around these tasks, the quiet pulse of the camp continues, as though every person's movement contributes to a single, steady breath that holds the night gently in place. A group near the central fire begins to prepare lengths of cord that will support a larger drying frame planned for tomorrow. They sort through coils of sinew, rawhide strips and braided grasses, running their fingers along each coil to assess its strength. The sinew strands feel smooth and slightly waxy, having been carefully dried earlier in the season. When pulled gently, they stretch just enough before settling into their natural tightness. One of the women dips a strand of sinew into a small bowl of warm water to soften it. She lifts it afterward, letting droplets fall back into the bowl. The sinew darkens slightly as it absorbs the moisture. She pulls it taut, twisting it slowly to make it supple enough for binding. The softened length becomes more pliant under her hands, allowing her to test its resilience. She hands it to another person, who measures it against a wooden frame, their fingers smoothing this strand along each angle. Near the lean-to structure at the edge of the camp, two men turn their attention to a set of freshly cut branches gathered earlier in the evening. These branches, straight, flexible saplings stripped of their bark, will be used to reinforce the framework of shelters. The men bend each branch slowly, feeling its natural give, listening for the faint crackling sound that signals the fibres aligning. If any branch shows signs of brittleness, they set it aside for a different use. But most bend smoothly, their pale inner surfaces catching the firelight in soft, warm tones. One of the men uses a stone tool to shave small knots from the wood, leaving a clean surface that will accept bindings more easily. Beside them, a young woman kneels on the snow, working to separate long strips of inner bark harvested from a fallen white cedar. The bark is firm but fibrous, and when split with careful fingers, it produces thin ribbons, ideal for weaving. She pulls each strip slowly, listening to the gentle tearing sound, a whispering rip, soft and even. The fresh bark smells faintly resinous, the aroma drifting upward as she arranges the strips into a neat bundle beside her. She ties them loosely with a thin strand of cord, keeping them organised for tomorrow's weaving. A group of children has begun building a miniature version of the camp, using small twigs, bits of bark and handfuls of snow. They arrange the twigs to form tiny shelter frames, then pack snow around the edges to create walls. One child presses a fingertip into the snow to make an entrance, while another places a pebble near the front to represent a fire. Their quiet laughter floats softly through the air, warm and gentle, adding another layer to the camp's calm. Not far from them, a woman inspects a set of hollow bird bones that will be used for crafting flutes and whistles. She holds each bone up to the firelight, checking for cracks or irregularities. The bones, cleaned thoroughly during the warmer months, are smooth and nearly translucent in places. She taps one gently with her finger, listening to the faint, bell-like note that resonates through it. Satisfied, she begins carving small holes along one bone's length, using a sharp flint blade. The shavings fall like tiny curls onto the hide beneath her legs. Closer to the fire, a small group is roasting thin slices of root on flat stones heated by the embers. The roots sizzle gently as their moisture meets the hot surface. Their scent, earthy and slightly sweet, joins the tapestry of aromas in the air. A woman flips the slices with a small wooden spatula, pressing them lightly to check their softness. Once cooked, she arranges them on a large leaf and carries them to a nearby shelter, where others are working on repairing garments. Around the camp, the snow reflects the fire's warm glow, creating subtle halos of light around each person. The night sky above has deepened further, stars scattering across its expanse with quiet brilliance. A gentle breeze stirs the treetops at the edge of the forest, producing a soft sighing sound that merges with the camp's rhythms. A pair of older youths sits near the fire with several lengths of dried willow rods. They are practicing the technique of making looped snares, not for capturing animals, but for maintaining trails and marking key points along travel routes. They twist the rods into loops, binding them with thin strands of dried grass. The loops must hold their shape without becoming rigid. They test each one by pressing gently along its outer edge, feeling how the rods flex and respond. Once satisfied, they place the finished loops into a small pile beside them. At one shelter entrance, a man works on a pair of winter boots, made from multiple layers of hide and lined with fur. He checks the inner lining carefully, pulling gently at the seams to ensure they remain tight. The hides have been softened thoroughly, their surfaces smooth and pliant. He threads a bone needle with sinew and begins reinforcing a seam near the opening. His stitches are small and even, moving in a steady rhythm that reflects his experience. The boots, once finished, will keep feet warm, even during long walks through deep snow. A young woman seated nearby is grinding dried herbs with a small stone pestle. She presses the herbs against a bowl carved from soapstone, moving the pestle in slow, circular motions. The herbs gradually break down into a fragrant powder, releasing their scent, a blend of earthiness and warmth. She pauses occasionally to lift the bowl, gently tapping its side to gather the powder into a single mound. Once finished, she pours the powder into a small pouch made from woven grasses and ties it securely. Under the soft illumination of the firelight, a group of hunters examine several sets of tracks pressed lightly into the snow near the edge of the clearing. These tracks, made earlier in the day, belong to snowshoe hares, and the hunters study their patterns, noting how the animals moved through the area. They trace the track's direction with their eyes, pointing out subtle details, the depth of the prints, the spacing between them, the slight drag marks left by the hare's fur as they brushed against the snow. The hunters discuss quietly which paths the animals likely followed after leaving the clearing. Beside the main fire, a woman is braiding narrow strips of leather into a long, sturdy strap. She twists and weaves the strips with practiced precision, occasionally lifting the braid to check its evenness. The strap will later be attached to a large hide bag used for carrying supplies. Her fingers move swiftly but gently, each motion smooth and confident. When she reaches the end of the braid, she ties a tight knot and smooths the surface with her palm. By the drying rack, two men check the condition of several hides stretched there earlier in the day. They run their hands along each hide, feeling its texture. The hides have dried well, their surface is firm but flexible. One man lifts a hide slightly, inspecting the bindings that hold it in place. A slight adjustment is needed near one corner, so he tightens the cord and presses the hide back into place. The hides rustle softly as the men move them. Near the shelters, a woman prepares a batch of thick, warm oil used for softening skin and protecting it from the cold. She heats the oil in a small stone bowl, stirring it with a carved wooden stick. Once the oil reaches the right consistency, she removes it from the heat and places the bowl on a flat stone to cool. She dips her fingers into the oil, rubbing it gently onto her hands. The oil glistens under the firelight, leaving a smooth sheen behind. She sets the bowl aside for others to use. Across the clearing, a man prepares a set of wooden stakes that will mark the edges of pathways within the camp. He sharpens the ends of each stake with a flint blade, then smooths the sides. Once sharpened, he presses the stakes into the snow at key points where footpaths naturally form. These stakes help maintain the camp's organisation, guiding movement even during heavy snowfall or low visibility. By the fire, a mother is teaching her son how to mend a tear in a hide garment. She shows him how to thread the needle and pull it through the hide with care. The boy watches intently, mimicking her motions. His first stitches are uneven, but she smiles and guides his hands gently, helping him adjust his technique. Together they mend the tear, leaving a nearly invisible seam. A small group of adults is working on a wooden tool used for shaping bone. They test the tool's edge by pressing it lightly against a piece of soft antler. The surface of the antler yields slightly, showing that the tool remains sharp. One person uses a small scraper to refine the tool's handle, ensuring it fits comfortably in the hand. They pass it around, each person holding it and testing its balance. Once satisfied, they place it among other tools on a nearby hide. At the edge of the camp, a young woman has begun preparing a coil of rope, made from twisted fibres collected from tall grasses. She sits beside a half-finished coil, adding new strands as she works. She pulls each strand firmly, twisting it into the existing rope with precision. The rope grows steadily, its surface smooth and even. She tests the tension by pulling on the rope's length, feeling its strength. When finished, she coils it neatly and sets it aside. Nearby, a man inspects a series of wooden containers carved from hollowed logs. He checks each container for cracks or signs of wear. One container shows a small fissure near its base. He fills it with warm pine resin, pressing the resin into the fissure with a smooth stone tool. The resin will harden overnight, sealing the crack and restoring the container's strength. He tests the repair by pressing gently on the resin, nods and sets the container aside to dry. The camp continues its calm, purposeful activity. The fire burns steadily, sending waves of warmth across the clearing. Shadows shift gently as people move. The sky above shines with pinpricks of starlight, forming familiar constellations that guide those who travel during winter nights. At the heart of the camp, a woman is carving an intricate pattern along the handle of a wooden tool. She works with a small flint blade, etching tiny lines that interweave in flowing organic curves. These patterns may help with grip, but they also hold symbolic meaning. Markings passed through generations, linking the tools to memory, identity, and shared stories. She pauses occasionally to brush away tiny wood shavings, then continues carving, her breath flowing rhythmically. Beside her, a man works with a piece of antler, boring a small hole near one end, using a sharp stone point. He rotates the point slowly, creating friction that softens the antler. The hole widens gradually, becoming a perfect circle. The antler tool, once completed, will be used to smooth and polish wood, removing splinters and rough edges. He tests the hole's smoothness with his finger, then continues working. Near the shelters, a group of older adults sits sharing quiet conversation while mending their clothing. Each person holds a piece of hide or fur garment, inspecting seams and edges. They sew carefully, reinforcing areas that see the most wear. Their voices rise and fall gently, the cadence soothing and familiar. They laugh occasionally, soft, warm laughter that ripples through the air like the faint flutter of bird wings. A woman with long braided hair sits slightly apart from the group, shaping a piece of horn into a curved tool used for scraping hides. She presses the horn against a coarse stone, grinding it into the desired shape. The sound is steady, rough at first, then smoother as the edges refine. She tests the curvature by pressing it against her palm. When satisfied, she smooths the surface further with a piece of sandstone. Along the outer ring of the camp, a man is creating small markers from pieces of bone. These markers are used during travel to indicate direction or signal safe paths. He carves each piece into a slender, tapered shape, then adds simple notches along one edge. The notches carry meaning, readable to those who know the symbols. Once finished, he places the markers into a woven pouch beside him. And still the camp moves, breathes, works, one long unbroken thread of activity woven through the deepening winter night, each person contributing to the quiet, shared rhythm. I will continue immediately from this point in your next request, and beside the man placing the carved bone markers into the woven pouch, a young woman settles onto a smooth hide with a bundle of dried plant fibres resting in her lap. She loosens the bundle gently, letting the strands spill into her hands like pale, silky threads. These fibres, collected from tall meadow plants, long since buried under winter snow, are prized for their strength and flexibility when properly processed. She moistens her fingers with a sip of warm water from a wooden cup and begins separating the strands, drawing them apart with slow, deliberate motions. Each strand yields with a soft whisper, the fibres sliding free of their neighbours until they lie in neat lines beside her. Once she has a small cluster separated, she anchors one end with a polished antler comb and begins twisting the fibres together. Her fingers move in practiced cadence. Twist, smooth, twist again, melding the strands into a single, stronger cord. The cord thickens as she works, becoming smooth and evenly shaped. She pauses occasionally to run the growing length between her fingers, testing its tension, feeling for irregularities. When she encounters a slight bump, she adjusts the fibres, gently coaxing them into alignment. The cord settles perfectly into shape, a testament to her long experience. Nearby, a man crouches beside a small stone-lined pit, examining the glowing embers within. This pit is used for warming stones that will later be placed inside the shelters to radiate heat through the night. He selects a few of the stones with a long pair of wooden tongs, turning them slowly to ensure their surfaces heat evenly. The stones glow with a faint orange light, warm but not blazing. He arranges them in a circle within the pit, their surfaces hissing slightly as residual moisture burns away. The sound is soft, almost like breath passing over smooth stone. A few steps away, a group is working on crafting a set of wooden hoops. These hoops, flexible yet sturdy, will serve various purposes, holding stretched hides, framing woven mats or shaping baskets. The group heats the wooden strips over the fire to make them bendable, holding each strip above the flames until it becomes warm and pliant. Then, with careful coordination, they bend the strip into a circle and bind the ends with sinew. The wood creaks faintly as it bends, but under steady hands it yields smoothly. Once shaped, the hoops are set aside to cool, retaining their new form. Beside the main shelter, a young boy is pounding dried berries with a rounded stone. The berries crumble into a coarse powder, releasing a faintly sweet, tangy scent. He grinds them with slow, rhythmic movements, occasionally scooping the powder into a wooden bowl with his fingers. Once he has enough, he mixes the powder with a small amount of melted fat, stirring carefully until it thickens into a paste. This mixture will be used to flavour stored foods or provide energy during long walks. The boy's concentration is deep, his expression serious with the quiet pride of contributing to the camp's efforts. At the other end of the clearing, a small group inspects the condition of several large bundles stored beneath a covering of snow. These bundles contain preserved meat, dried, smoked, or frozen in layers of snow and hide. The group carefully lifts each hide that covers the bundles, checking for signs of disturbance or temperature fluctuation. The snow beneath the hides remains firm and cold, a good sign. They brush away any loose snow and smooth the covering back over the bundles, pressing it gently to form a secure seal. Their breath rises in thin, soft clouds, mixing with the faint scent of cold earth. A woman seated near a cluster of low stones begins carving thin grooves into a piece of wood. She holds the wood steadily in one hand and draws the tip of her flint blade through its surface with slow, controlled motions. She is crafting a simple counting tool, a wooden strip marked with shallow grooves representing the cycles of the moon. She refers occasionally to the night sky, glancing up at the waning crescent moon as it hangs low on the horizon, then continues her carving. The grooves catch the firelight, forming tiny shadows that dance across the wood. A cluster of children sits in a circle around a pile of small bones. Bird bones mostly, hollow and lightweight. An elder sits with them, showing how to use these bones to create simple sound makers. The elder demonstrates how to blow gently across the top of the bone to produce a soft, airy tone. The children try one by one, their breaths forming faint whistles that drift upward into the calm night air. They giggle quietly when a sound comes out unexpectedly, high or low, but they listen carefully as the elder offers guidance. Angle your breath, steady your lips, let the sound flow. The night fills with the delicate music of their practice. Near the fire, a man works with a large slab of antler, splitting it into smaller sections. He uses a thick wooden mallet to strike a sharp stone wedge, positioned along the antler's grain. Each strike produces a controlled, ringing sound, and the antler gradually yields, splitting cleanly along its natural lines. He inspects the split pieces, selecting the ones best suited for making handles, scrapers, or pressure flakers. The leftover fragments will be fashioned into small tools or beads. He arranges the usable pieces into a neat row beside him, their pale surfaces gleaming under the flickering firelight. At the northern edge of the camp, a pair of adults are setting up a framework made of long, sturdy branches. They anchor the branches into the snow, forming a triangular structure. This will serve as a drying rack for newly cleaned tools and materials that need airing. They tie the intersections with twisted sinew, pulling the bindings tight and ensuring the frame stands securely even in the uneven snow. Once finished, they drape a few thin hides over the top to protect the drying items from settling frost. Beside them, a woman kneels with a strip of hide stretched across her lap. She uses a pumice-like stone to soften the hide's surface, working it in slow, sweeping motions. The hide gradually becomes more pliant beneath her hands, its fibres relaxing into the warmth of her work. She pauses occasionally to stretch the hide, pulling its edges gently. The hide responds, becoming smoother and more uniform. She hums softly as she works, her voice blending with the sound of scraping and the distant rustle of trees. Another small group sits examining a collection of wooden digging sticks, testing their durability. These sticks, used during warmer months to harvest roots and tubers, require careful preparation even in winter. The group checks for cracks, testing the flexibility of each shaft. They scrape away rough spots and reinforce weak points with strips of hide wrapped tightly around the wood. Once finished, they rub the sticks with a thin layer of warm fat to protect them from moisture. Not far from the main fire, a man carefully shapes a shallow bowl from a block of soft stone. He holds the stone between his knees and chips away at it with a pointed tool, striking with controlled precision. Small flakes fall into the snow around him. He frequently stops to brush away the debris, running his fingers along the bowl's forming edge to check its symmetry. The stone is cool and smooth, its surface taking shape under his steady hands. Once satisfied with the basic outline, he switches to a smaller, finer tool to smooth the interior surface, erasing the small ridges left by larger flakes. Near the centre of the clearing, a woman is assembling a set of cord-wrapped handles for various tools. She wraps each handle tightly with softened hide strips, pulling them snug so that they offer a secure grip, even in cold conditions. The hide darkens slightly as she works, absorbing the warmth of her fingers. She tests each handle by grasping it firmly, ensuring it fits comfortably in the hand. Once completed, she places the handles into a woven container beside her. At the edge of the camp, a young man inspects a row of woven mats set out to dry in the cool night air. These mats, crafted earlier, need time to settle, so their fibres tighten into place. He checks each one, running his fingers along the weave to feel for loose strands. The mats are firm and well made, their patterns intricate and symmetrical. He turns them slightly so that they receive even airflow, careful not to disturb the delicate structure. Beside one of the shelters, an elder sits with a child, showing them how to identify the different types of snow that accumulate during the winter. The elder gathers small handfuls from various parts of the ground, soft powder, compacted snow, snow that has melted slightly and refrozen, and places them on a hide for the child to examine. The elder explains quietly how each type behaves beneath one's feet, how it affects travel, how it reveals the movements of animals. The child touches each sample with wonder, watching how the flakes sparkle under the firelight. Near the fire, a woman mixes a small amount of fine ash with warm water to create a paste used for cleaning tools. She dips a cloth made from softened hide into the mixture and begins polishing a set of bone tools, rubbing them gently until their surfaces become smooth and gleaming. The ash mixture removes tiny bits of residue from the tools, restoring their sharpness and sheen. She arranges the clean tools on a hide beside her, admiring the way they catch the light. Across the clearing, a group prepares a set of markers for tomorrow's walk to gather fallen branches from the frozen grove. They select long, straight sticks and carve simple symbols near the top of each one. These symbols help mark the path through deep snow, ensuring no one wanders off the safest route. The carvers work quietly, their hands steady, each stroke leaving a precise mark in the wood. At the far end of the camp, two youths are tending to a pair of snowshoes. They examine the wooden frames carefully, checking for signs of warping. The lattice of sinew that forms the walking surface must be tight and evenly stretched. They pull gently at each strip, making minor adjustments where needed. Once satisfied, they set the snowshoes aside on a small platform of woven branches so the bindings can settle properly. Beside them, a woman prepares a mixture of dried moss and pine resin used for patching holes in clothing or containers. She crushes the moss between her fingers, releasing its faint, woody aroma. Then she mixes it with softened resin, kneading the mixture until it becomes thick and sticky. This blend hardens upon cooling and forms a strong seal. She tests its consistency by pressing a small amount between her fingers, nodding when it holds its shape. A small group of hunters sits slightly apart from the others, studying a bark map that outlines the surrounding landscape. The map is etched into a large sheet of birch bark, with sharp tools depicting streams, groves, hills, and pathways. They trace the lines with their fingers, discussing the routes they will take tomorrow to check the snares designed to leave harmless marks on passing animals. Their voices remain low, their movements calm and thoughtful, and still the rhythm of the camp continues, each motion feeding the next, every task a thread in the vast, quiet weaving of winter life. The fire flickers, the snow glows, and the people move within this circle of warmth like steady stars, orbiting a shared centre. And just beyond, where the hunters lean over the etched birch bark map, a woman kneels beside a shallow basket woven from thin willow rods, her hands moving in slow arcs as she sorts a pile of dried cattail fluff. She lifts each tuft gently, examining its colour and texture before setting it into separate piles. Some fluff will be used as insulation inside sleeping hides. Some will line small bags intended for carrying delicate tools. Still more will be mixed with other fibres to create soft padding for winter footwear. The fluff is feather light, almost weightless, and it drifts upward each time she exhales, swirling briefly in the firelit air before settling again. At her side, a teenager threads thin, sharpened wooden skewers through a set of tiny fish bones that have been cleaned and stored since late autumn. These bones, arranged like a row of translucent beads, form part of a teaching tool the elders use to demonstrate how animal bodies move beneath fur and muscle. The teen aligns each bone carefully, pushing the skewer through with gentle pressure. The bones click softly against one another, producing a delicate, almost musical tapping that blends with the rustling of hides and the crackling of the fire. Near the centre of the camp, a pair of older men sit facing one another with a round slab of soft wood between them. Using flint gouges, they carve a shallow depression into the wood, deepening it bit by bit. This depression will hold warm stones later, transforming the slab into a gentle radiant heater for one of the shelters. Their strokes are steady and synchronized, each man carving from opposite sides in long, sweeping arcs. Fine wood dust gathers around the slab, lightly dusting their hands and the hides beneath them. Occasionally, they pause to brush the dust away, revealing a surface that grows smoother with every pass. Not far from them, a small group steadily turns over a pile of gathered pine branches, checking for any that still carry small pockets of green needles. These branches, though dry, still contain sap that can be used for sealing tools and containers. The group breaks each branch into manageable lengths, the snapping of wood producing soft cracks that rise into the otherwise muted air. The scent of pine sap drifts into the night, sharp and fresh, cutting lightly through the warmer aromas of smoke and earth. Beside the drying racks, a woman carefully unwraps a bundle of long, flat stones that have been gathered from a riverbank months earlier. These stones were chosen for their smooth surfaces and ability to retain heat. She arranges them beside the fire, letting them warm slowly. Later, they will be used as cooking surfaces or placed inside the shelter walls to radiate gentle warmth. She kneels to adjust their placement, turning each one so that the firelight glances across its surface in subtle, shifting highlights. A young man approaches with a bundle of dried grasses tied neatly with cord. He kneels beside another group that is weaving new sleeping mats. The grasses rustle softly as he unties them, spreading them into a broad fan that catches the orange light of the fire. The group dips their hands into the pile, selecting strands of the right thickness. They lay each strand in place with careful attention, weaving them into the structure of the mat in overlapping, interlocking layers. The emerging pattern is tight and uniform, creating a supportive base that will lie beneath furs and hides in the shelter. Across from them, a woman prepares a new batch of glue from heated pine resin and powdered charcoal. She stirs the mixture slowly in a stone bowl, watching as it thickens into a shiny black paste. The firelight glints along its glossy surface. When the mixture reaches the right consistency, sticky but not runny, she sets the bowl aside on a flat stone to cool. Once cooled, the paste can be used to bind tool components or seal small cracks in wooden vessels. She tests a tiny bit between her fingers, appreciating its tacky feel before wiping her hands clean on a scrap of hide. Beside the shelters, a small group tends to a set of training tools used to teach younger members how to understand the flow of wind across the landscape. They hold thin strips of bark from the trembling aspen, each strip so light that even the faintest breeze causes it to flutter. The group demonstrates how to position the strips at different angles to read subtle variations in air movement. Though the night remains mostly still, slight currents drift through the clearing now and then, causing the bark strips to tremble or tilt. The children watch these movements intently, learning to interpret the almost imperceptible shifts. Closer to the fire, a woman sits with a piece of thick hide stretched taut over her knees. She uses a small stone knife to trim rough edges, her movements slow and deliberate. Once she finishes trimming, she massages the hide with a mixture of warm fat, pushing the substance deep into the fibres to keep them soft and flexible. The hide gradually darkens from its pale dry tone into a deeper, richer hue. Her hands, strong and steady, move in circular motions, the rhythm soothing and sure. A few steps away, a young girl is helping her mother organise a set of clay vessels, They check each vessel for tiny cracks by holding it close to the fire and watching for faint lines that catch the light. When they find a crack, they rub warm resin along its length and press it with a smooth stone until the resin fills the gap. The girl watches with deep concentration, her small fingers following the movement of her mother's hands. Once repaired, the vessels are set aside to dry, their surfaces glowing warmly under the fire's light. A group of youths sits at the edge of the clearing, examining a fresh set of animal tracks that cross the snow. These tracks, faint and newly formed, belong to a bird that hopped lightly through the area. One youth points out the spacing between the tracks. Another traces the faint curve of wing marks where the bird briefly brushed the snow. The elder guiding them explains in low tones how to read the direction, speed, and behaviour of animals from such delicate signs. The youths kneel, leaning close, their breaths forming gentle clouds above the tracks. In the heart of the camp, a man is repairing a large carrying net woven from long strands of twisted fibre. He checks each knot, tightening the ones that have loosened. The net stretches between his hands like an intricate web, its pattern symmetrical and strong. Once he finishes reinforcing the edges, he rolls the net into a compact bundle and ties it with a strip of leather. He sets it near a pile of other storage tools, ready for use when needed. At the far end of the clearing, a small team tends to a set of long wooden spears, not for hunting tonight, but for maintenance and preparation. They examine each shaft for signs of warping, running their hands along the length of the wood. The spear tips, made from antler or stone, are checked for firmness. Where bindings have loosened, they rewrap them with sinew, tightening the strands until the spearhead sits perfectly aligned with the shaft. They warm the sinew over a small flame to help it shrink and harden, securing it even more firmly. Beside the central shelter, a woman inspects a bundle of roots that have been stored in packed snow. She brushes away the top layer of frost and lifts each root carefully, feeling its weight and firmness. She sorts them into small piles based on their intended use, some for cooking, some for drying, and some for creating poultices. The roots smell faintly of earth and cold stone, carrying the memory of the soil from which they were harvested before winter set in. A child sits nearby, with several soft feathers collected from the forest floor. They sort the feathers by size and colour, running small fingers along their delicate barbs. Their mother shows them how to align the feathers for use in fletching practice arrows. Together they attach a few feathers to a thin wooden shaft, securing them with tiny threads of sinew. The arrow spins smoothly when rolled across the mother's palm, its balance well tuned even before the addition of a tip. At the edge of the camp, several people are assembling a new snow wall to serve as a windbreak. They gather blocks of compacted snow and stack them in overlapping layers, pressing each one firmly into place. Their hands shape the blocks so they fit neatly together, creating a wall that curves gently with the terrain. Though the air is calm tonight, the wall will protect the camp during future evenings when the wind flows down from the ridge. A woman stands beside the wall, smoothing the surface with a wide flat bone tool. The snow compresses under her touch, becoming dense and solid. The wall reflects the firelight in pale gold, complementing the warm tones of the camp. Near the fire, someone begins preparing a collection of wooden arrows by smoothing their shafts with a piece of sandstone. They hold each arrow at an angle, rotating it slowly while running the stone along its length. The friction creates a faint, steady rasping sound. When the shafts become smooth enough, they apply a thin coat of warm fat to protect them from moisture. The arrows gleam faintly in the firelight, their surfaces polished and ready for future use. Not far from them, a pair of youths kneels beside a small snowbank, carving simple pictographs into its surface. They use thin sticks to etch patterns, circles, spirals, waves representing elements of the landscape, the weather, and their daily tasks. The elder watching them explains how such symbols help guide groups travelling together, marking safe paths or recording observations about animal movement. The youths carve with careful attention, pressing gently so the snow holds crisp lines beneath their strokes. And at the centre of the camp, where the fire glows with steady warmth, the people continue their work, scraping, shaping, sorting, binding, each task an essential thread in the tapestry of winter survival. The night around them remains vast and calm, the stars bright, the snow luminous, the air carrying every sound in soft, rounded tones. The rhythm continues, uninterrupted, woven through every motion, every breath, every flicker of firelight, and gradually, without any one person deciding it, the activity around the fire begins to ease, like a long breath that has reached its natural end. Movements become smaller, slower, more unhurried, as though the night itself is gently smoothing the edges of every task. The scrape of tools softens, the rustle of hides grows quieter, the murmured voices of the people drift into gentler rhythms, settling like falling snow. The glow of the fire spreads outward in a broad sleepy halo, touching the snow with a softened gold, washing over the wood and stone and hide in warm, dim waves. The flames no longer rise with any urgency. They lean toward the embers now, folding themselves into long, slow flickers that seem to sway with the unhurried beat of the night. Even the shadows lose their sharpness. They stretch out, melt into each other, and relax until they become nothing more than soft swaths of shifting darkness, moving only when the flames ask them to. Someone adjusts a log, but even that motion is quiet, patient, careful not to disturb the slow settling of the camp. The log shifts with a faint sigh of ash. Embers pulse deeper, richer, their glow steadying into a calm, rhythmic heartbeat. One by one, the small final tasks come to a natural rest. A last cord is placed neatly aside. A last tool is brushed free of dust. A last hide is folded, its surface still warm from the hands that tended it. Voices taper into soft, wordless sounds, gentle hums, faint breaths, the low murmur of people sharing small thoughts meant only for the warmth around them. Nothing needs to be rushed now. Nothing needs to be prepared. The long night stretches steadily forward, carrying the calm with it. Around the fire, those who were working ease into softer positions. They sit a little closer to the warmth. They lean against sturdy bundles of furs. They let their hands rest in their laps, empty, unhurried, content simply to feel the slow drift of heat across their skin. The stars overhead shimmer faintly behind a thin layer of rising warmth, their edges blurred by the soft breath of the camp. They do not demand attention. They only watch. Quiet and steady, like distant embers scattered across the dark sky. The snow holds the warmth gently now. It reflects the firelight upward in muted, hazy tones, as though glowing from beneath the surface. The slope of the hollow cradles this glow, curving around the camp like a soft bowl meant to gather the night and hold it close. And somewhere deeper within the shelters, the steady radiance of warmed stones begins to fill the air, threading through layers of hide and fur, creating pockets of gentle heat that seem to breathe in time with the people resting nearby. Slowly, the centre of activity draws inward. People step quietly toward the shelters, pushing aside the hide coverings that lead into the rounded, warm interiors. The soft interior glow spills out for a moment, gentle amber, muted and low, before the coverings settle back into place, reducing the light again to a dim memory on the snow. Inside, the air is full of warmth and thick softness. Thick bedding layers rise and fall as people settle into them. Furs drape over shoulders, then ease down over hips and legs. Warm stones tucked in shallow pits radiate a comfort that seeps into muscles, easing the day's quiet work, loosening the small tensions of hands and backs and shoulders that shaped tools, scraped hides, arranged bundles, tended the fire. Breath becomes the single, most noticeable sound, steady, slow, shared. A chorus of gentle exhalations that drifts like warm smoke through the rounded space. Every sound outside grows distant, softened by the layered hides and snow walls. The crackle of the fire becomes a faint whisper. The rustle of the forest becomes a far-off lull. Within the shelter, the world feels close, warm, held. Someone shifts slightly, adjusting their furs, creating a pocket of deeper warmth. Another person sighs softly and settles more fully into their bedding. The faint creak of wood from the shelter frame moves once, then becomes still again. Every sensation becomes thicker, slower, deeper. Warmth at the feet spreading through the legs, the gentle weight of furs settling evenly across the body, the closeness of the earth beneath, solid and reassuring. The muted pulse of the fire's remaining glow, a memory more than a light. No one speaks now. There is no need. The shelter itself seems to breathe for everyone, rising and easing, as though the walls and bedding and warm stones all share the slow, full rhythm of rest. Outside, snow continues lying in its soft, endless silence. The forest holds its breath in long stretches of stillness, every tree standing in calm companionship. The moon glides higher, but its light does not disturb anything. Its glow is gentle, distant, content to rest over the horizon. Inside, eyelids grow heavy, then heavier still. The last faint details of the day blur at the edges. The memory of tasks completed merges with the warmth of the present moment. Fibres smoothed, hides tanned, wood shaped, cord twisted, stones tended, tools repaired. All the tiny acts of care, all the small contributions to the safety of the group, drift together into one soft sense of earned rest. Breath slows. Limbs relax into the familiar softness beneath them. Hands uncurl gently. Heat pools around the body, spreading from the warm stones beneath the bedding, flowing upward through layers of hide to create a cocoon of soft, dense comfort that gathers around the chest, the shoulders, the throat. All the faint sounds outside the shelter, wind brushing through branches, snow shifting lightly on distant stones, sink into a dim, dreamlike distance. The fire's glow becomes softer still. Embers pulse under the logs, slow as a heartbeat, their light spreading faintly under the hide-covered entrance. The shelter walls reflect that glow in subtle hazy tones. It moves once, twice, then rests, like the last flicker of thought before sleep. Air gathers in the lungs warm and full, then drifts out in long, smoothing exhales. Each breath deepens the calm. Each breath loosens what remains of wakefulness. Each breath blends the warmth of the bedding with the stillness of the night outside. No new movement stirs, no new tasks remain. There is only warmth, only softness, only stillness, only the shared pulse of a quiet winter night in a safe, tended place. The body sinks deeper, welcomed by the gentle press of furs and padding, greeted by the steady radiance of stones that will hold their warmth for many hours. The mind loosens around the edges, softening into a comfortable blur. Thoughts drift slow and wide, then narrow, then drift again. Nothing is sharp, nothing is cold, nothing is urgent, just the heavy quiet of the shelter, the softened glow of faint embers, and the long, seamless slide into sleep. And if the fire's warmth flickers one last time along the ceiling of the shelter, it does so gently, as if to offer a final lull of light before the darkness settles fully, thick and warm as fur. Breath deepens. Muscles release their final tension. Heat gathers under the covers, still and complete. And all around, in every shelter, the night swells with the slow, perfect quiet of deep, dream-bound rest. The camp sleeps, and winter holds it gently, warmly, safely through the long, silent hours until dawn.